Hey guys, DMS3TV here. Today, I'm going to talk about the custom painting I did for my HD650s and actually for a friend's HD650s. So, I didn't film much of the process when I did it, so we filmed it again and did it on these right here. Now, I did these very similarly to how I did my other HD650s, but I learned a few things along the way when I did my original ones. So these actually turned out a lot better. There were some parts of the process that I didn't film, such as when I was actually painting them because I didn't want to risk getting any paint on my camera lens. But I will describe, everything that went on throughout this process. It's actually really straightforward. So starting off, you have to disassemble your headphones, whatever headphones you use. HD650s aren't too difficult. There's actually lots of tutorials online that show you how to disassemble these, especially on YouTube, so I didn't really feel like it was necessary for me to make another one. Once you have your headphones apart, there are several things you're going to need. You're going to need sandpaper. I prefer having two different kinds, so I got a more heavier grit for kind of getting off like most of the paint and things like that, and then a more fine one for detailing and making sure it's really smooth overall so the paint would stick to it. So you really want to get off every bit of paint you can, everything that was on there, down to the plastic or metal or whatever there is, so you can really ensure that it's going to stick on there, because paint doesn't really stick to, well, other paint as well. So I made sure to get paint also that was made to work with plastic. So what I did is I got two kinds of sandpaper. I got primer, the actual paint itself, and a gloss clear coat to seal everything in. So, with that being said, we started off with sanding. There was in two steps. Of course, I started by sanding with the heavier grit, and once that was finished, I moved on to the more fine sandpaper to get out the details, but you still want it to have a little bit of a texture to it for the paint to actually stick to. This takes quite a while, and you really have to be patient, because getting this right will really help in the long run. I mean, really just stick with it, make sure that every little, nook and cranny is exactly how you want it before moving on, because you really don't want your paint to be messed up and have to redo all of this. So it could take several hours to actually sand out and get everything correct before you start painting. It kind of helps to paint things in separate groups if you're doing two different colors. So in this case, I painted the grills first, since I was doing a black and white theme. The grills I hung up with a little bit of tape, painter's tape, and make sure you mask off any areas that you don't want painted. So make sure you go on and do that before you start painting. I set up the grills and I started lightly coating the primer on. Now this I did in several coats. I did a first light coat. You could obviously tell there were still, spots where you could see through and see the metal and see all that. It wasn't completely covered yet. I let that dry for just a couple minutes before putting on another coat. And I did that 3 or 4 times before the whole thing looked nice and solid. And then, in this case specifically, since I already had a white primer on it, I went on and did clear coat because we really didn't need to add anything else to it. These were just going to be white. And this was different from my red HD650s. My red HD650s, I did primer, let that dry for a few minutes, and then started applying colors, and then did a clear coat. Now, you want to do all this relatively quickly, basically, like 3 or 4 minutes between each coat, and then wait 5 or 6, maybe 7 to 10 minutes, and then put your clear coat on there, because you don't want the paint to be you don't want the paint to really start to seal. I mean, it takes a long time for this stuff to cure, but it really helps to kind of go on and get everything on there within a reasonable time span, because the paint I specifically got seals in 20 minutes. So I wanted to make sure that I got everything done before then. Now, during this process, it's important to make sure that you get everything on as evenly as possible, and you really have to make sure that you're not, like doing this indoors or in somewhere like super crazy windy or there's dust and stuff everywhere. I mean, all of that, first off, you don't want to risk your health, and second off, you don't want to end up messing up your headphones in the process. So make sure that you have the right environment to paint in. After this is done, I took the rest of my pieces, hung them up, and painted them my other color, which was the white in this case. So both of those were just done with a white primer and a satin primer, and then I clear coated and sealed them. And afterwards, all you have to do is wait overnight, reassemble them, and they're good to go. Now, for the paint to actually cure completely, for it to be like 100%, it's not going to pick up imprints off anything, you usually have to wait a good 24 hours. Now this stuff, it is safe to touch, it's not going to hurt or anything like that after it's completely dry, but if you say set this in like a messenger bag or something like that, it could still pick up like an imprint of the fabric because it hasn't completely cured yet. So that's absolutely worth keeping in mind. I actually messed up on that on my original red HD650s, and you can see just barely on here the texture of my carrying case, whereas you cannot see it at all on these white ones, because these I actually let cure all the way before putting them on, you know, a bag or anything like that. So these have been sitting on the stand ever since they were reassembled. And as many of you know, I actually have a custom cable to match my HD650s, but after seeing how those turned out with the black and white, I might redo this blue and black. I'm not 100% sure yet, but this basically would apply to almost any set of headphones. Obviously, materials may vary based off what you're doing, and if you are doing, you know, colors like these, the red and blue, you want to do like a white primer first and then start putting your colors on after that. That way you have a good solid base for them to actually apply to. And make sure, like I said, that you use some sort of a clear coat to seal everything in. You don't want to be, you know, rubbing paint off and stuff like that later, and you want to be able to protect it from, you know, whatever elements may be around. High humidity areas can also sometimes cause issues with painting, but I mean, generally the main thing you want to worry about is just not painting somewhere dusty and not painting somewhere inside, which should be pretty common sense. But anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've got some really interesting stuff coming out in the near future, so make sure you stick around for that, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.